Why, hello, and welcome back to 5-ish minute reviews. Looks like I lost the footage to this one originally, so this is going to be a re-record. That's perfectly fine. I at least still have the order and everything. So, as I left off last week, we have a new Civivi to look at. This is the Sentinel Strike. This is, for all intents and purposes, basically the Civivi version of the Wii Ziphius. That was basically a limited edition, or they're not making, enormous amount of them or whatever. And pretty much all of them are already sold out anyway. But it was a really, really popular model. I think there might be another variant coming out closer to the holiday season this year, but maybe I'm wrong on that. Either way, here we go. So this thing has some concessions made to it, of course. And it's going to be next to impossible to actually see this. But, yeah, it states there, K110. So this is the first Civivi in a long time that actually essentially uses D2 steel on it. They've moved almost all of their production for these guys, or for Civivis, over to a mixture of 14C28N and Nitro V, both of which are basically offshoots of AEBL, but one of them's made here in the States in New Jersey, and one of them's, of course, made in Sweden, that being Sandvik. And that way they kind of keep their demand for both of the steels kind of separated a little bit, makes it a little bit easier for them to get a hold of what they need for their production sort of stuff. So, yeah, that's what we got going on there. I actually do have a very, very generous sized finger choil on here, which is great, especially because this is definitely going to be an Asian designed knife, and not many of them actually have gigantic mitts like I apparently do, so there is that. We got a lot of different deployment methods. We of course have the large cutout. We have thumb studs on both sides. There we go. And we also have the flipper tab there that you can, of course, do other stupid stuff with if you'd like. So this thing has an aluminum body, or at least aluminum scales. Well, we will say that. And then we have, I don't know exactly what they call this, but it's a reinforced nylon of some sort, whether it's glass-filled nylon or fiberglass-filled nylon or whatever. It is what it is. And unfortunately, it does make this knife feel a little cheap. I'm not necessarily against FRN, and I will get to a knife that I actually do like in it later on in the video here. But this, without doing a whole lot of, texturing and stuff like that, doesn't feel all that great. And it is basically what you are interfacing with the blade, and kind of makes the aluminum feel a little bit cheaper because we don't have aluminum for much of the backspacer. We have a little bit of steel there in the very end, of course. So yeah, this thing is pretty interesting. I like it a decent amount, but I really, really wish that there was a different material that they could have used for that. Thinking about, well, I don't know. If it was done with popular materials right now, then this would have been done out of Ultim. However, Ultim is pretty difficult to actually do a lot of milling on it. It does some chips and stuff like that, so making the canal for this thing to be the kind of taco or clamshell sort of thing that it is, I don't think that would work really with that material. I would have probably preferred G10 or something like that myself, but it is what it is. It kept the price down. These are under $100 for what you get there. It does, however, have a little ceramic ball glass breaker sort of thing on the end that you can't do anything about, which is unfortunate. But that does at least allow you to swap that deep carry pocket clip over to the other side, so that's nice. I do generally like when knives that do have the little glass breakers sort of thingies on the end there allow you to, remove them without, hurting the knife overall. But, because a lot of folks who, you know, carry around things like cell phones, tablets, anything else with like glass. You know, these things can pose to be a problem. If you accidentally dropped this onto a phone or something like that, that screen's gone. Whereas, you know, if it landed either on the aluminum, for the most part, you'd probably be all right. And with the FRN, definitely be all right. But with that, yeah, you're going to break something. So there's that. But still, very, very nice knife. And I don't mind that this thing is using K110 blade steel on it. It's just interesting that they haven't really used the other more stainless options that they use on pretty much all of their other knives these days. I do think there was a version that also had their 9CR/10CR Damascus blade, but it was fairly expensive if I remember it, like $130. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I'm not quite sure, but that's what I remembered it being. So I definitely didn't pick that one up. I do like that this actually does use full aluminum scales for the button lock, not using, you know, some thin steel liners or something like that on the inside, which is why I decided I was going to pick one of these guys up. If it had steel liners in there, I would have steered clear personally due to my problems with these stupid button locks jamming on me when they have thin steel liners in there. But I've spent enough time on this guy. Almost everybody knows what it is at this point. It's quite a popular model for him. So there we go. It does come in a couple of different colors and stuff like that. Maybe red and blue and something or other anodized. I think the green one, the green anodized aluminum, was the one that had the Damascus blade on it. Let's talk some specs, and then I can move on a little bit here. We've got a 3.68-inch blade from the handle out to the tip. It's going to be a little bit less cutting because we do have that finger choil there. It's going to be 93.4 millimeters. 3mm blade stock thickness, which is very common for Civivis here. 3.49 ounces. Or 99 grams, so that FRN definitely does help it, even though it's a large knife. Keep it under that ounce and inch mark that some people use as some measuring kind of targets or whatever. 0.47 of an inch thick, so a little bit on the thinner side, which is nice. It's 11.9 millimeters. And yeah, there we go. Let's see. Next up is a knife that I definitely do not recommend. This is the Mar Payara. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And this is the larger version. They also made a smaller one. And this is definitely post Almar actually designing knives. So this is from the estate or whoever is actually running what became of the company once he's no longer in the picture. This is definitely a Chinese-made knife, as pretty much they all are now. They're not doing any of them in Japan using that same kind of Gerber factory that Almar established, you know, probably back in the 80s or something like that. You know, I kind of thought it was a little bit interesting and definitely on the affordable side, but there's a lot I really don't like about it. It's using D2 blade steel on here. I'm not sure why it's not actually printed on the blade, but that's pretty much what almost all of their newer production stuff is made out of. I suppose that makes sense. And we have these FRN handles. They are a little bit squishy, but we do have some decent full length liners on there, so it's not anywhere near what you would get out of a standard bug out or something like that. So that is a positive. But there's a lot of negatives on it. We have jimping, some of it coming from the liners, and then, you know, some of it from the FRN, both on the top and bottom. It's aggressive, way too aggressive. It actually doesn't feel good if I'm actually, you know, gripping onto this with any amount of force. It's just digging into my fingers. Yeah, we can see a whole bunch of dots and everything like that there. We also have this kick up here, which ends way too early. It makes my thumb on my hand feel incredibly cramped. My thumb wants to be much more up here, so having much more ramp would have been nice. The blade itself, the geometry on it is very, very thick. I'm guessing they were thinking this mostly to kind of use as more offensively, which is a lot of what Almar's designs were. You know, definitely the Falcon, the Eagle, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, this one just doesn't end up working out all that well for it. Which is impressive because it has a 2.25 millimeter blade stock thickness. So it is really thin, but because of that, they've ground it so obtusely to try to remain or hold on to some of that strength. It's just not working out all that well for me. This thing is not using bearings, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing as far as crossbar locks are concerned. But this thing is also riding on very, very cheap nylon washers and doesn't feel all that great compared to what you would get out of phosphor bronze or something like that. The pocket clip on this thing is also incredibly long, which is actually ridiculous because the mini version has the same clip, if I remember right, which means that clip takes up most of that knife's backside of the handle. Which, if you are going to use this offensively, that takes much longer for you to fully pull it out of your pocket before you can even deploy the darn thing. Which really doesn't end up working out for me. Or probably a whole lot of other folks there. And yeah, the FRN, it's got this kind of a fish scale sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily bother me, nowhere near as much as all the excessive jimping that we have basically everywhere else. And, of course, kind of a reverse, or not a reverse, a recurve Tonto kind of thing isn't exactly my absolute favorite blade design for a lot of EDC tasks. So, there we are. The pocket clip, you can actually swap it over to the other side, so that's nice. And these guys are like about $60, so they're not expensive. But there's a whole lot about it that just didn't really hit me right. I'm not a fan of this knife, unfortunately. But yeah, there we go. Let's talk about the specs and I'll move on. I talked about the 2.25 millimeter blade stock thickness. This is 3 1/4 or 3.24 inches between the scale and the tip there. The smaller one is under 3 inches. This guy would be 82.3 millimeters thick. It is D2 blade steel, as I'd mentioned earlier. Even though it's not stamped on the blade, it should be on the box somewhere. And if not, well, it was on the webpage. I got this from Knife Center, but obviously they're available in plenty of places. 3.45 ounces or 98 grams. A little bit of that's definitely going to be the full-size liners on there, which I do actually appreciate. 0.44 of an inch thick or 11.2 millimeters. For the handle thickness there, so it's decently yeah, decently thin. So there we are with that. Just not a particularly knife that I'm all sorts of fond of. Here we are with this guy, and definitely looks familiar. This is the QSP Parrot in Denim Micarta. This is the V2 version of it. Which has changed one thing. They've put bearings on this guy instead of using the bronze washers, well, bronze / nylon, if I remember right, on the original. And because this is produced a little bit newer, it's more expensive. Not much more, but it is over 30 instead of under 30 now. But other than that, everything's the same. Doesn't actually feel any different as far as the action is concerned. So, you know, they didn't really gain a whole lot by putting bearings on it, other than, you know, marketing, hey, it's got bearings. So, yeah. Not a whole lot else I really need to say about this guy. It's definitely a well-known model at this point. So, yeah. 3.2-inch blade, 81.2 millimeters. D2 blade, just like the original. 3 millimeter blade stock thickness. 2.89 ounces for this guy, 82 grams overall, and 0.47 of an inch thick for the handle, 11.8, just like the Payara that I just talked about there. So yeah, there we go. Let's see. Next up is another knife people are probably familiar with. Here we are. We got the Spyderco Endura M4. This one's got M4 blade steel on it, because that was the variant that I went with because of kind of the affordability of it. And it is a bit different than some others that I'm a little bit more familiar with, like this guy, my my original one in VG10 with the spider edge on here. Very different, as this is, of course, much more of a saber grind, like they did quite a bit of others in the past. I'm actually not used to how thin or light the blade feels on this guy. It definitely feels like a different knife, that's for sure. Don't really need to say a whole lot more on some of that sort of stuff here. What I will say is that this guy is kind of a I think they call it a distributor exclusive, so quite a few places actually have it, but it is exclusive to somebody, with that whole teal and M4 sort of motif going on there. What I will say is that there is a non-exclusive version of this knife using K390 blade steel, which I would probably suggest you get over this one. Well, for one, this thing was probably sold out. The other one is kind of perennial, so it'll stay around. It is a bit more expensive, and M4 is fairly similar to K390 in a lot of ways. However, what actually makes K390 much better is its ability to get much harder. The M4 here, I don't remember exactly what, well, Spyderco doesn't actually state exactly their hardness for a lot of these things, but these things are much closer to 60 on the Rockwell hardness scale, whereas their K390 much closer to 64, which puts K390 much higher above M4. They act about the same if they're at the same HRC, but they're not. So there you go. Unless you really want that kind of teal green kind of look to them, then I would go with the K390. However, these guys were decently affordable, so that's why I ended up picking this guy up over that one. I suppose I could talk about some specs here, since it is going to be a little bit different than my original one here. It's still got that same 3.8-inch blade, or 96.5 millimeters, with the CPM M4 blade, 2.9 millimeter blade stock thickness, which I think slightly thinner than these guys here, which I think were like 3, maybe 3.2 or something like that. So yeah, just a little bit thinner. 3.29 ounces, so definitely under that ounce and inch mark. 93 grams. Of course, these are FRN handles that I do like quite a bit. And they are full linered, so they don't squish like, your bug outs and all that sort of stuff. 0.43 of an inch thick for the handle, so decently thin, 10.9 millimeters. There we go. It's got the David Boy dent on there, which I always like to see with these mid-mounted lockbacks. And bronze washers on these guys. So yeah, it's a nice knife. Interesting for me to actually get a full flat grind one of these guys, since I'm so not used to them. But yeah, there we go. Next up, we got this guy, which they've been around for a while. This is the Real Steel Gslip. This was the Knife Center exclusive version of this here. For all intents and purposes, this is a G5 metamorph that is a slip joint rather than, liner lock or frame lock. And because of that, you got to use the fuller there. It's got Real Steel's kind of weird 2/3, 1/3 rather than half for the walk and talk on there. It is a little weird, but that's fine. It's using natural micarta. This isn't super great quality micarta, but it's not bad. This does have a decent amount of squish to it, as we really don't have much in the way of reinforcement. We do have some liners in there, but they're fairly thin going all the way through there. So, the tops and bottoms are a little funky kind of feeling. We do have their wire pocket clip. This one is a bit stiffer than some of the others, but still, these things can end up getting deformed on you, and unfortunately, they're really hard to rebend into place, unlike other kind of standard pocket clips here. VG10 blade on it. I was kind of hoping that this had a really, really good heat treat on it, like I've had from their Hugin or Hugin knife, and not really the case. This one is much more middle of the pack. Not bad, but nothing to write home about. This isn't going to win any awards for edge retention or anything like that. But yeah, they were basically done with them, and Knife Center was getting rid of theirs, so it was on sale. I do wish that the back spring on this guy was a bit stronger. I think they went a little bit on the light side for the fullers here to be a little bit easier to pinch open. But still, for me, it feels really, really easy for me to be able to kick that out to there. And the heel of this guy can get you once that might happen to you. So, yep, definitely consider this thing to be a slip joint, not a knife that will remain open and all sorts of nice and safe for you. So, if you're used to that, then this probably isn't it. But, if that's the case, there's also the G5 Metamorph, like I mentioned earlier. So, yeah, there we go. 3.49-inch blade on this guy, 88.5 millimeters. 2.3 millimeter blade stock thickness on this guy. And it is a nice full flat grind, so decently slicey on this one. 2.43 ounces or 69 grams, so that's nice and light. 0.42 of an inch thick, so right around the same that Endura 4 is. 10.7 millimeters, so just a touch thinner, actually. And yeah, this guy's got some bronze washers in there. This is an O-Staff Hell design, if you weren't familiar with it. And we got a little bit of a lanyard thing going on through the back spacer here. Alright, and normally I would call it there, but I did have one other knife that I picked up basically at the same time that I got the Gslip here, and that's this guy, the Bear & Sons CU-137. This was basically me being curious. This knife was not expensive. It was about 13 bucks, so I definitely have my expectations tempered on this one here. Bear & Sons are made in the U.S., but they're not made to the same quality as you're probably thinking with many other U.S. companies. But yeah, this is kind of their mini sodbuster sort of thing. But still impressive that it has these anodized aluminum handles on the backside. This guy did come with a mark in there. If I get it real nice and up close, we can see that yeah, all the anodization is in there too, so I didn't scratch this after the fact. And this has a 1095 blade, so definitely not stainless at all. And they highly polished it. And it has an interesting kind of a blade grind to it, which is a little bit on the thicker side. I reprofiled it to 20 degrees, if you believe that. It's not less than that by itself. And yeah, this thing does not hold an edge all that well. 1095 can, but doesn't mean that it has to. I was trying to actually just peel a sticker off of something that it was either plate steel or aluminum. I don't remember exactly what it was, but just the fact from doing that, it ended up rolling the edge. It's decently easy to strap back. Well, in this particular case, I did actually need to sharpen a bit of it, and yeah, there's still just a little bit here that wouldn't strap out, unfortunately. But yeah, it was just kind of an interesting sort of slip joint. This guy does not have a half stop at all, so you get walk or talk. You don't get both. And this guy has a pocket clip, which is virtually impossible to use. It's way too short because of that. It's incredibly stiff. I can barely bend the darn thing. And then it's sitting up above the scales with button screws on there. Yeah, there's no real room for pants material to come up past there unless, I don't know, you're wearing some business slacks or something like that. But still, like I said, this was a $13 knife, just something I was kind of interested in and something that pushed me right over the edge into getting some free shipping. So, yeah, there we go. Let's talk about the specs on here, and I'll get at y'all here. So, 2.72-inch blade. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit less than that for the cutting. Virtually no sharpening choil. There is kind of one, but doesn't really operate very well as one. I did mention it's $10.95 for the blade steel. 2.4 millimeter blade stock thickness on it. 1.7 ounces or 48 gram weight. So nice and light at least. We got 0.34 of an inch thick, so decently thin. 8.7 millimeters there for you. And yeah, this guy does have bronze washers as well, which is pretty impressive. I was mostly guessing that this guy was going to have some nylon or other kind of plastic washers instead or something like that for the price, but still, yeah, it's all right. Yeah, there we go. There's the Baron Sons C137. We got the Real Steel Gslip. We got the Spyderco Endura 4 and M4. We got the QSP Parrot V2. We got the Mar Payara. Seriously, unless you really, really think that this knife looks super great for you, pass. It's not all that great. And of course, the Civivi Sentinel Strike, which I would say, if you can get over the FRN for the handle cap there, this one is actually a great knife. So, alrighty. There we go. Hopefully this ends up working out. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day, yo.